On this Shabbat, Chayei Sarah, we're going to delve into the story of our lives. Chayei Sarah literally means the lives, not the life, it's plural, the lives of Sarah. And we learn at the beginning of our parsha that Sarah has died. If you recall, last week's parsha included the Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. And many of the commentators note that upon receiving the news that her husband was about to do to her son, her soul flew out from her, and she no longer lived in the physical world. The lives of Sarah. Vayihu Chayei Sarah me'ah shana v'yasrim shana v'shiva shanim shnei Chayei Sarah. Now, Sarah's life was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years. 100 years, me'ah shana, and 20 years, esrim shana, and 7 years, sheva shana. Thus, the years of Sarah's life. This begs a pretty obvious question, which Rashi raises. Why doesn't Torah just say that Sarah lived 127 years? That makes sense, right, to ask that question. The wording is repeated, Rashi says, to indicate that all of her years were equally good. All of her years, every single unit, every single month, every single day. Now, we're going to pause here just for a moment to turn to you and say, come on. It's like, that's impossible. If she's a human being living in this world, she's got to have some tsuris. She's got to have some challenges. Maybe it's saying that even the challenges and the things that happen that we look at to be bad things are part of living. And the way she faced them, that made them good. That somehow she rescued, that she fought through the klipa, that hard surface that was hiding the light behind the darkness. Maybe, but there could be other explanations as well. Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib of Ger, the Gera Rebbe, otherwise known as the Sfat Emet, he responds to Rashi. He's like, what? In the same way that I just did. And he comments, there must be differences, variations, and changes during a person's lifetime. But the ones who are truly righteous find fulfillment in all their days. Amidst, I add, the challenges. Fulfillment, wholeness, completion, perhaps. These can be found in every place and at every time. Thus, the Sfat Emet comments, they were all equally good. That Sarah was able to unearth the goodness behind everything. Elu tzadikim shebemitatan nikra'u chaim. In Talmud Masechet Brachot, it points out that the righteous are called living even after death, while the wicked are called dead even in life. And so Sarah is a model for us of a righteous human being, as well, of course, as Avraham, of how to live our lives so that we leave behind a legacy that pays it forward. You may be aware, in all of your Torah learning, that when we quote Rashi, for example, we say Rashi teaches, all right? It is as if Rashi were still alive today In other words, the righteous are called living even after death. So we have it. Rashi teaches, Maimonides teaches, the Sfat Emes teaches, and our beloved Reb Zalman of blessed memory teaches. It's happening, just like Torah, in real time, right now. And the teaching is what is left of the legacy, which goes on and on and on. Rashi, Rambam, Sfat Emet, Reb Zalman. Vayavo Avraham lispod l'Sarah livkechota. Sarah dies, and Abraham does what we are all instructed to do. Abraham set out to lament for Sarah and to weep over her. Of course, what follows that is the purchase of the cave for Sarah's gravesite at Machpelah. But first, the mourning. Lispod, to lament. Livkot, to weep. And a beautiful, beautiful painting from one of my most beloved painters, artists, Mark Chagall. Lispod, hesped. A hesped is what we offer at someone's funeral, either at the memorial or at the gravesite. A hesped, lispod, to lament, is a eulogy given at a Jewish memorial service or funeral to honor the deceased and comfort the bereaved. Vayavo Avraham, lispod l'Sarah, v'liv kota, to weep over her, to lament over her. And our understanding of these two things, hesped and bechi, livkot, cry, or lament, a hesped is often offered in praise for the worthy qualities and achievements of the deceased. Now, I need to point out that I have done many a funeral where the person was less than perfect. As a matter of fact, that's always the case. There are always qualities of that person that the family would rather not carry on with them. Perhaps you are in or have been in such a situation. So we take the opportunity to lift up the parts of them that are praiseworthy and kind of push to the side the parts of them that were difficult. Although I have said in the past, yes, and acknowledged that there were difficult parts of them as well, without going into it. Lament, livkota, to cry over her is what that means, to arouse the emotions and a sense of grief and loss in listeners. In other words, the person who delivers the hesped has two jobs. First, to offer praise, and then to draw everyone together into community and to offer a picture of the person, of the deceased, so that senses are aroused, right? Now, even sometimes those senses are not senses of grief, but senses of, it can be a situation where there's relief. We all know people in our lives that perhaps it was a great release for them to let go of their bodies. I went into my records of some hespeds that I have done. And this was from 10 years ago. I can't even remember the woman to whom I gave this for, but this is an example of a hesped. Imagine that you are all the people at the memorial service, and this person to whom I'm referring to was a relative, close friend of yours. What can we say about a singularly unique woman, one who carved out a life of inclusion and radical acceptance long before those phrases came into common use? She possessed a spirit of fierce independence. She had an insatiable appetite for life. Do you see what I'm doing? And this, of course, is after conversations with the family. One day, she saw an ad in the paper recruiting for teachers at PS 47, a public school for the deaf. It was there while teaching she got her teacher's license, and it was there that she demonstrated her fierce love of doing the right thing. How? Because at that time at PS 47, deaf children were not allowed to sign in school. The claim was that speech was superior over signs for the education of the deaf. But Roberta would hear nothing of that, and so she taped paper over her classroom window so you couldn't see from the outside, and her kids communicated using sign language. So you see, again, what the hesped is doing, it's raising up now to the nth degree of a particular quality, of a part of a person's life. And then I quoted the poet Mary Elizabeth Fry because the family asked me to use this poem in the hesped. It captures what Barbara would want us to hear right now. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I do not die. Changing directions just a little bit. But there have been times in my life when I have thought to myself, oh, it would be really cool if I could hear what people had to say about me at my funeral. And you may remember the most famous example of this, of course, which I want to share a little bit right now. Under the title of How Would You Like to Be Remembered? As the service proceeded, the clergyman drew such pictures of the graces, the winning ways, and the rare promise of the lost lads that every soul there, thinking he recognized these pictures, felt a pang in remembering that he had persistently blinded himself to them always before, and had persistently seen only faults and flaws in the poor boys. The minister related many a touching incident in the lives of the departed too, which illustrated their sweet, generous natures, and the people could easily see now how noble and beautiful those episodes were, and remembered with grief that at the time they occurred, they had seemed rank rascalities, well deserving of the cowhide. The congregation became more and more moved as the pathetic tale went on, till at last the whole congregation broke down and joined the weeping mourners in a chorus of anguished sobs, the preacher himself giving way to his feelings and crying in the pulpit. Raise your hand if you know where this comes from. There was a rustle in the gallery, which nobody noticed. A moment later, the church door creaked. The minister raised his streaming eyes above his handkerchief and stood transfixed. First one and then another pair of eyes followed the minister's, and then almost with one impulse the congregation rose and stared while the 3 dead boys came marching up the aisle. Tom in the lead, Joe next, and Huck, a ruin of drooping rags, sneaking sheepishly in the rear. They had been hid in the unused gallery listening to their own funeral sermon. Aunt Polly, Mary, and the Harpers threw themselves upon their restored ones, smothered them with kisses, and poured out thanksgivings, while poor Huck stood abashed and uncomfortable, not knowing exactly what to do or where to hide from so many unwelcoming eyes. He wavered and started to slink away, but Tom seized him and said, "Aunt Polly, it ain't fair. Somebody's got to be glad to see Huck." "And so they shall. I'm glad to see him, poor motherless thing," and the loving attentions Aunt Polly lavished upon him were the one thing capable of making Huck even more uncomfortable than he was before. And suddenly, the minister shouted at the top of his voice, "Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Sing and put your hearts in it." And so I end my Devar Torah with the song.
All people that on earth do dwell, sing to the Lord with cheerful voice. Serve him with joy, his praises tell.
May we be remembered among who, with a cheerful voice, served God with joy. And may we be counted among the righteous who are called living, even after we have taken our last breath. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.